Hey guys, how's it going? Kripparrian here. New expansion, lots of new cards. This expansion's card reveal schedule is absolutely crazy fast, so we've got a lot of cards to look at, and well, let's have a look. Some of these I haven't seen or played with before, so it's kind of like a first look, first impressions of the upcoming Ashes of Outland expansion. And Teron Gorefiend is one of the first few cards they showed off. It's a very interesting one. It's a 3-cost 3/4, so it's a pretty balanced, maybe a bit outdated nowadays stat line. And it destroys all friendly minions, and it brings them back with +1/+1 when he dies. So you're going to have some board space issues potentially, because if you do this effect and then play a bunch of stuff, if your opponent single target kills him and you had a pretty decent board that you removed, well, it might not work out so well. Obviously, it's not really that good if you just have like a few injured minions and you basically use this to heal them later. It's not that good. The main way that you'd use this is if you hit things like eggs, things that you want to die that spawn a bunch of minions. Now, the issue with that is if you do that and it fills your board and your opponent kills Teron Gorefiend, it's not going to respawn all that many things right away. So it's a pretty tricky card to function properly, but with that said, it could still be quite good because we don't actually know what the game is going to look like when the expansion is released. Skull of Gul'dan features the Outcast mechanic. To reiterate for those that are not familiar with it, Outcast does an additional effect if the card in question is the leftmost or rightmost card in your hand. So typically you're going to get consistent Outcast effects if you're playing a fast deck, because you can manipulate cards in your hand well by playing them. Proactive fast cards makes Outcast very easy to pull off. Now, this is a substantial card draw that typically will work best if you have cards that cost 3 or more, because the Outcast is reduce their cost by 3, draw 3 for 5. Now, draw 3 for 5 is pretty good. You have to keep in mind, Nourish was basically that, minus the flexibility, but, it did get nerfed a little bit. Skull of Gul'dan does that with a bonus effect that's very strong. You get a 9 mana total discount across those 3 cards, potentially. But to realize that, you have to be playing more or less of a mid-range deck, and that's a bit of a problem when it comes to the Outcast mechanic. So it's a really high power card, but struggles where you would put it in a deck. So challenging one once again. Warglaive of Azzinoth. So some super cool, stuff that you've seen Illidan use in the past. These were the big deal in the Burning Crusade in World of Warcraft, and man, I love that expansion. So it's a 5-cost 3/4 weapon for demon hunters, and after attacking a minion, your hero may attack again. So you can attack your opponent's face after you hit a minion. That's kind of the idea. Pretty okay card. Not really blown away by this, but there are different attack triggers in the Demon Hunter class, so perhaps attacking multiple times a turn will outweigh the fact that the card is not that powerful at face value. Metamorphosis, legendary spell for Demon Hunter. For 5, you swap your hero power to deal 5 damage, and after 2 uses, it swaps back. Now, the hero power in question does still cost 1 mana, just as the original Demon Hunter hero power costs 1 mana. So it's basically for 7 across 2 turns with your hero power disabled, you can do 10, 5 across 2 different targets. I mean, that's pretty good. Yeah, it's pretty good. Kargath Bladefist. This is kind of one of those like new big boss cards. I don't remember exactly what they're called, but basically you get primes. So you get primes when it dies. So first, when you play it, it's a 4-cost 4/4 rush, and the death rattle shuffles Kargath Prime into your deck. 4 mana 4/4 rush, not bad. Nothing you'd really put in your deck if you didn't have the additional effect. The additional effect gives you Kargath Prime in your deck, which is an 8-cost 10/10 versions of this, and when it attacks and kills a minion, you get 10 armor. Pretty crazy. Lady Vashj is the prime for Shaman. It's a 3-cost 4/3 with spell damage +1. Certainly a more playable card at face value. The death rattle gives you Vashj Prime, and Vashj Prime is a 7-cost 5/4 spell damage +1. And the battle cry draws 3 spells and reduce the cost of each by 3. So the idea is that later on, whatever spells you might have remaining in your deck, you can play them all at once. It's not that good of a prime version, because you might just not have spells in your deck by the time you draw the second card. If you guys who've played like Golden Monkey decks, you know, with shuffle effects, with single shuffle effects in particular off of legendary cards, you don't really have a lot of consistency in what's left in your deck at that point. But the first play of Lady Vashj is a pretty strong card, so I think that offsets it pretty nicely. Imprisoned Observer, 3-cost, 4/5, dormant for 2 turns, so it just does nothing for 2 turns. And when it awakens, you deal 2 damage to all enemy minions. So it's a ridiculously broken card for 3, but your opponent can predict the effect. Now, playing this in Mage with freeze effects, well, maybe your opponent can't predict the effect as easily as he would like. If you play this on 3, it goes off on 5, perhaps you can combo it with another clear effect, or perhaps you can set up for like a Blizzard later on. There's a lot of things that you can do, mainly because you're playing Mage. So, pretty good Mage card. Otherwise, I think it might struggle to see play, but I think this is going to see some pretty decent amount of play. The Dark Portal. Draw a minion. If you have 8 cards in hand, it costs 5 less. Interesting. I think there's perhaps some way to play very minion-light decks, but we'll have to see before we can pass much judgment on this type of deck. Imprisoned Satyr, 3-cost, 3/3, dormant for 2 turns. When it awakens, reduce the cost of a random minion in your hand by 5. So it's a powerful effect because of the combo nature, and Druid has pulled off some pretty big combos in the past that's certainly capable of it. And if you have like, you know, hand copying effects like with Elise, you can perhaps reduce the cost furthermore by copying the already reduced card. So some pretty interesting combo enable effects there, and again, we'll have to see how they will be used. A new legendary for Druid. It's a 3-cost, 3/4, has Taunt, and you shuffle the Prime when it dies, so very fair card at first glance. And the Prime version is a 10-cost, 9/9 Taunt with a choose one of a 9/9 Taunt or a 9/9 Rush when it's played. So you get 2 gigantic cards. You get the Taunt and you get an additional Taunt or a Rush. So it's just one of those cards that's strong enough to kind of play in most decks, unless you're playing combo-based Druid decks. I think Druids will benefit from this card quite a bit. Bulwark of Azzinoth. Oh boy, the great items from the Burning Crusade expansion. So this is a warrior card, of course. 3-cost, 1/4. When your hero would take damage, this loses 1 durability instead. So in a way, it just like absorbs 4 hits, either through just direct damage, perhaps some hero power hits, or minion hits. I fail to see the usefulness in this card, to be honest, but it certainly serves its purpose thematically, to where if there are combo decks that come up that do like, 20 damage or 10 damage times 2 or something like that, this would actually be very effective in stopping them. So warriors having this tool available to them certainly puts warriors in a good position in the upcoming expansion. Pit Commander, I mentioned that you'll see a lot of big demons coming up from the Demon Hunter class. This is one of my favorite ones, and I believe there are other big demons that can synergize off of it. It's a 9-cost, 7/9 Taunt. At the end of your turn, summon a demon from your deck. How about that? So you draw the card and play the card. So it's obviously worth it. Even if you get like a 2/2 demon or something like that, it is still worth it. It's a taunt, so it protects your health. It's an ongoing effect, so it's just an immediate removal card where you just lose the game. Like you get rid of this or you're dead if you're on the other side of this. So very powerful card. We don't really know what best archetype the Demon Hunter is going to fall into. This is more of a controlled Demon Hunter type of card, but it's a very powerful one at that. Furious Felfin. It's a little Murloc. It's a 2-cost 3/2, and if you have attack this turn with your hero, it's a 4/2 with Rush for 2. Very powerful card. Spectral Sight. Demon Hunter card once again. You draw a card, and if it's outcast, you draw another. So it's draw 2 for 2. That's better than Arcane Intellect by 1 whole mana, and that is a big deal. And you would be playing this in a Demon Hunter deck with small cards, because you still need some card draw in those. And if you are, the Outcast is very easy to play, making this a very strong card draw option. Kael'thas. Some of you have already played with this card. It's certainly very powerful in decks that have huge spells as well as powerful small spells. I know some of you guys have been experimenting with Druid, experimenting with Mage. Very, very cool card. I expect we'll see lots of Kael'thas until he's removed from Standard. Fungal Fortunes. Draw 3 and you discard any minions that you get, but costs 2. So the way you have to look at this card is, can you really afford to lose the minions in your deck? And if the answer is yes, then it's a good card. Most Druid decks are actually pretty spell heavy. You might have like 50% spells, 50% minions. So for 2 mana to draw 1.5 cards, that might be just fine. You know, that's a fair card in my book. 2 mana draw 1 is a little weak. 2 mana draw 2 is really broken, which is what Demon Hunters just got. I don't think you can effectively make a Druid deck with just no minions. It's like, can you afford to discard the minions in your deck? And if you can, you probably are going to play this Druid card. New Hunter card, you draw a beast and you give it +3/+3. Very strong. You can really take advantage of specific beasts doing this. There's a lot of combos that you'll see from cards to come and from things that you've seen, even like a Tundra Rhino. Think of it. If you have just combo related beast cards like Tundra Rhino that gives other beasts charge, well, you can mass up a specific combo with a great deal of consistency using Scavenger's Ingenuity. Ambush, new rogue card. It's a secret. That's right. Rogues are getting secrets once again. It costs 2, as they all had in the past. After your opponent plays a minion, summon a 2/3 ambusher with poisonous. So you basically just get a discounted Cobra for 2. And it's probably not that much of a surprise because it's a pretty good card. Your opponents will kind of expect it, but it doesn't mean it's bad. A 2-cost Cobra, if your opponent expects it, is a pretty good play. Torrent, new Shaman card. Costs 5, deals 8 to a minion, and it costs 3 less if you cast a spell this turn. Now, it wasn't played very much, but we had 2 mana deal 8 with some overload. The idea of playing a spell before this to lower its mana cost, I think is a pretty fair thing to do. I think this is a pretty fair Shaman removal. It's really tough to beat out Hex, but in metagames where there's like lots of pretty big or mid-range sized minions that don't have a lot of death rattles, I think you'll see some of Torrent over Hex in the Shaman decks. Neutral card, 2 cost 2/4. It's a demon, which is pretty relevant. All minions take double damage from spells. So you can play this and then Flame Strike for 8. It's obviously very good if you have mostly removal spells and not a whole lot of minions. And there's certainly a lot of decks that hit that target pretty well, namely Mage, but not exclusively. There's a lot of classes out there that just want to remove things constantly, and this helps you do it quite easily. Blackjack Stunner is a new rogue card. It's a 1 cost, 1/2. If you control a secret, you return a minion to its owner's hand. It costs 2 more. So it's like better than a sap effect. Very strong. I mean, there's not really much else to say. If you play secrets, this is an auto-include. It's almost in reverse. The fact this card exists makes you want to play secrets in rogue. Shadow Council, replace your hand with random demons and give them all +2/+2. Well, you gotta have a few high RNG meme cards in each expansion. This is one of them. We got a Shaman weapon, Bogspine Knuckles. After your hero attacks, transform your minions into ones that cost 1 more. The main issue with this is your opponent can kind of see it coming, and it costs 5. Because it costs 5 and your opponent can kind of see it coming, it'll never be like a tier 1 effect, because then people will start running weapon removal. Not to say it's not a powerful card, it's just one of those cards that is too easily countered to be a tier 1 deck. So I love it. I like the effect. I'm sure I'll try it, but it's not going to take hold of the meta like previous Evolve Shamans had in the past. We got more Shaman cards, 3 cost 3/3. You transform adjacent minions into one that costs 1 more. That's a powerful evolve effect. It's a 3/3 for 3. You can't really go wrong with that. You just have to really see the whole viability of playing evolve decks. It might be very high, might not be so high. More of Demon Hunter cards. It's a 5 cost 10/6. And when this awakens, deal 10 damage randomly split across all enemies. So that means arcane missiles. It means it can hit your opponent's cards. It means it can hit your opponent in the face. And that means that you would play this in, let me be clear, every single Demon Hunter deck ever. This card is beyond absurd. It is so crazy. The stats are insane. The stat distribution is insane, considering you're getting a huge push on the board. Really think about it. In the past, Paladins have played, what was it even called? I don't know. The thing that does like 8 arcane missiles for 6 mana, all right? Paladins played that when they were like mid-range, with finishers. This is just like way better than that. And I mean, this is like 3 times the card that is, right? That's a card that has been played and constructed in recent years. This card's crazy. Dragon Maw Overseer. We don't know how Priest is going to work out in the upcoming expansion, but this might clue you into some options you might have. At the end of your turn, give another friendly minion +2/+2. Zoo Priest. Why not? All right, we got more weapons here. After your hero attacks, add a random Murloc to your hand. This is a Paladin card. Paladins have had the Murloc archetype in the past, but it hasn't really been pushed full swing for a while, to a point where it's difficult to know how this will work out. Outside of the full Murloc deck with what is it called? The card that brings out all the Murlocs into play. You don't really want too many cards in that deck that aren't exactly Murlocs. So as good as this is in that deck, Tip the Scales I think it's called, it's probably not going to see too much play in that deck. So I don't know. We'll see. Alar. Now this was a pretty interesting and notable NPC in Burning Crusade. A lot of you guys know this. Some of you guys even fly Outland on this mount. In Hearthstone, it's a 5 cost 7/3 elemental. In the death rattle, you get a 0/3, and it resurrects into this on your next turn. Just keeps coming back to life. But you'd have to be winning by quite a lot for it to do that at all. I have my doubts about this card, but I can't call it bad because crazy win more, unstoppable win condition unless your opponent can remove it with a spell, that typically sees someplace somewhere. Marsh Hydra, 7 cost 7/7 rushing Druid Beast. And after this attacks, you get a random 8 cost minion to your hand. So it helps you carve out the late game, which is a very powerful effect. And it's a pretty late game card that does something right away. Now, it's not that good of a something, but you have to consider that you're going to carve out into an 8 next turn. And it's a value generator. It's a card that keeps on giving. So it's a card that I think we'll see people at least try. This is the new Rogue Legendary, keeping in mind that Rogue just got its secrets back. So after you play one of these secrets, you discover a secret from a different class. And that will make secrets my favorite form. Actually secret. Your opponent will have no idea what cards you're playing. And that's when you'll really get to see who are the very experienced players and the more novice players. I really love cards that kind of distinguish that and give you an opportunity to use your knowledge of Hearthstone to outplay your opponents. And this is certainly one of those cards. Also, the stat line is quite favorable to an effect like this. Your opponent's going to try to get rid of this, and he's probably going to struggle greatly. Imprisoned Scrap Imp is a 2 cost 3/3. It's dormant for 2 turns. And when it wakes up, it gives all your minions in your hand +2/+2. It's a Warlock buffer for later. It's difficult to see how effective this would be in a fast-paced zoo deck, because if you play this on 2, you'll give up the board, first of all. And for it to be really effective 2 turns later, you have to probably not play too much of your hand, which is a real problem. So the way that I see this is it's more of like a combo setup, more of like a mid-range type of card, and it's difficult to see viability because of those restrictions, but it's cool nevertheless, and of course we'll try it regardless. Astromancer Solarian. So this is the prime for mage. It's a 2-cost 3/2 with spell damage +1. It's even better than the Shaman at face value. Very decent card just to play. And the prime version is a 7-cost 7/7, still has the spell damage +1, and you cast 5 random mage spells that target enemies if possible. So with that consideration, it's going to be a very powerful hit. You kind of have to take this as like a good 2-drop that later becomes maybe a win condition, or at least probably or very likely remove most of what your opponent has played on his side of the board. And with that consideration, that's a very good card. We're going to see this in a lot of mage decks. The Lurker Below. Oh boy. My first raid in Burning Crusade, actually my first raid ever in World of Warcraft was for Lurker Below. It was like some guild that I joined, and oh man, it was a disaster. People kept getting killed by his spout for like 6 hours. We didn't kill it, and we all left in disappointment. Not that it was a very hard boss, if you guys remember. Regardless, in Hearthstone, it's a Shaman card. It's a 6-cost 6/3, and the battle cry deals 3 damage to an enemy minion, and if it dies, repeat to one of its neighbors. Oh yeah, that's right, the spout. Akama is coming, 3-cost 3/4 stealth, and the death rattle you get Akama Prime, which is a 6-cost 6/5 permanent stealth minion. It's gonna be pretty hard to stop that one. We have the Hunter Prime. It's a 3-cost 2/4 with Rush. And the primed up version is an 8-cost 4/4 with Rush that summons 3 copies of this minion. Being a beast, you can perhaps search for it and give it +3/+3, which would make it an 8-cost 7/7 that spawns 3 copies of it. We're talking some real big deal in that case. But is that going to be a viable way to play this card? Might be a little bit tricky. Warmaul Challenger. I tweeted this card, actually. This is my favorite anti-aggro card that I have seen Blizzard make. It's a 3-cost 1/10. All right, this is like the token annihilator. All right, and the battle cry is you choose an enemy minion, you battle it to death. So they attack each other until one of them dies, I guess. So obviously, if your opponent has like a 10/10, this does 1 damage to it, and it's abysmal. But maybe it'll, enable you to execute the minion. I don't know, maybe something like that. The idea is your opponent has a token card. If your opponent has like a 1/1 or a 2/1, you play this. So you get the immediate removal, take a little bit less damage next turn, and it's a really strong card. It's a really strong presence on the board against further tokens or further small minions, which is how most people play aggro in the last few years worth of Constructed. Lady Liadrin, Paladin Legendary, is a 7-cost 4/6. This is a really popular card on Reddit. Add a copy of each spell you cast on friendly characters this game to your hand. So if you're playing like an aggressive Buffadin and you need your hand reload, look no further than Lady Liadrin. Battlemaster Leorox is an 8-cost 5/5 Hunter Legendary, and it summons 3 beasts from your hand. So again, notable that there are strong beast OTK combos with this option. If you get Tundra Rhino and 2 gigantic beasts, and you can further buff the beasts in your hand through the cards that you've heard me talk about. There's also beast discounts. So if you've discounted some beasts, perhaps you can play the discounted beasts and have this trigger on the non-discounted beast to get an even crazier board. So lots of really cool options for killing your opponent right away. But again, we don't really know the overall viability of that type of list in the meta that we're going to have. Augmented Porcupine, 3-cost 2/4. When it dies, it does its attack damage split among all enemies. So sometimes they'll hit your opponent in the face, sometimes they'll hit some minions, but it's a 3-cost 2/4 with a pretty decent on-death effect. So it's a pretty good card regardless. Evocation, Mage Legendary, fill your hand with random mage spells, and at the end of your turn, discard them. How cool is that? Now, I think that's going to see quite a bit of play in decks like Casino Mage, but I don't know. Maybe hand size will be a problem, because maybe some of the spells you're going to get are going to be a bit larger than you want. And lastly, Kayn Sunfury. This is legendary for Demon Hunter coming up in the Ashes of Outland expansion. I tweeted this card as well. Good card, great memes. All right. We know what Hunter has been trying to do since the beginning of time. Demon Hunter comes along and does it right away. You can always go face with this card. Now, let me explain. This is a 4-cost 3/5 charge, which in my opinion would be a pretty good card in its own right, because I think like a 4-cost 3/5 rush is pretty decent. This is charge. It can hit your opponent in the face, but it's not that it can hit your opponent in the face. All friendly attacks ignore taunt. So that means if you have a massive weapon from a previous turn, you can bypass all of your opponent's taunts. If you have a bunch of minions, all of them can bypass your opponent's taunts. Everything bypasses your opponent's taunts when this is in play. That is no joke. This card is going to be the new ultimate finisher in Hearthstone. Hope you guys enjoyed my card review, and I wish you guys check out the next one.